It's not the will to win that matters. Everyone has that. It is the will to prepare to win that matters. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Farhat Umar, and I bring you Mastering Public Speaking lesson number 2, which is preparation, preparing. We have already talked about priming. Well, our little friends, our very own Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol, talk about Soni ji and Sonu ji. They seem pretty happy after traveling up the ladder of choice and after knowing how important public speaking is. They seem to have overcome fear. You can look into their eyes, they look pretty cool, and then you can see, the change within. This reflects on their body language. But they have long way to go to reach the flight of prosperity. Will they be able to reach there? Let's find out. Public speaking is not a pretty new thing. Even at the times of Aristotle, you'll be surprised, they used to have public speaking competitions. Cicero's 5 canons of rhetoric, it's something that's really beautiful. I found it in some old book. It actually talks about invention, development of idea, arrangement, creating a structure, and then style, the process of determining how to present the arguments, then memory, the process of memorizing the lecture, and delivery. 5 important steps of public speaking. Well, I'll be basically dealing with these 4 for now, and not talk about this one because this has been reserved for other lesson. Moving on to prepare, I've basically divided preparing into 2 aspects. One is a lifelong process. Preparing for a public speech, preparing for public speaking is a lifelong thing. We keep learning by listening, by speaking, by reading, and also by writing. And then preparing a speech is a pretty different genre. See, preparing a speech involves conscious efforts in, writing the whole structure of a particular speech, and then researching the content, and then, adding up humor and facts and stories and a lot of questions and statistics in it, and then, structuring the beginning and the end. It's a whole different process. I'll be dealing with it separately. Preparing for public speaking, I have basically divided it into 4 components. Listening, like a small kid, he first listens, then speaks, then he starts reading, A for apple, B for ball, then he starts writing, A, B, C, D. Listening, you see these 2 words listening to each other? Well, listening is an essential component of life, dear friends. We have been given 2 ears and just 1 tongue so that we can listen more. Got it? Yes, I think you got it. Well, listening involves, watching news channels, movies, documentaries, a lot of stuff on internet, on TV and radio. You must watch it, listen to it, and then you must also listen to your teachers, your friends, your classmates, and your own self. And of course, your mom and dad, which you don't listen to at all. Well, we must watch prominent speakers and observe their tactics. You see, watching someone offline or online or going and watching him live is a pretty different experience. So you must put yourself into both these kinds of experiences. I always tell my students to follow Toastmaster, TED, Unacademy, and many other such forums online. They are an amazing resource. Ladies and gentlemen, the 5th important point is making notes of the important things. You see, our mind is a very volatile thing. We should agree, we do not remember everything we see or we experience. So it's better to jot things down, and then it helps us at conscious level and at subconscious levels. It helps us in pooling knowledge. Obviously, it helps us in improving the understanding of the world and people, which is an essential quality of a public speaker. Then it opens new paradigms of thought process. You see, if you see variety of speakers who are the best in their field talking about a certain thing or talking about their own respective fields in different manner, it adds up new paradigms to your thought. So you must not take it lightly. And then it helps you build fluency and vocabulary. That actually happens more of subconscious, in a subconscious way, but it can also, if you pay a proper attention, it can you can pick up a lot of words from whatever is being spoken, and it can also help you in nice sentence formation. Moving on to speaking. Wonderful Sufi saying, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. The first gate, ask yourself, is it true? At the second gate, ask yourself, is it necessary? At the third gate, ask yourself, is it kind? And if the words do not qualify these 3 gates, they should not be uttered. Well, dear friends, speaking is an essentially important component of public speaking, obviously, but, speaking truth, being honest and compassionate, speaking only when it's required, then analyzing your speech, and then recording and re-recording and trying to, find out mistakes and trying to correct them, it should be the part and parcel of your daily life if you want to become a good public speaker. And then at the conscious and subconscious level, it helps us build credibility, and it helps us connect with people well. If you're honest and compassionate, you'll always, you will always magnetize people towards you, and then it'll help you build fluency and vocabulary. And reading, my dear friends, if you want to see a common thread between most of the powerful world leaders, business champions, and all these greatest of the greatest people in the world, the common thread is reading, dear friends. You must inculcate this habit. 3 habits of reading. You must read books, journals, magazines, news. A public speaker reads a lot. And then you must collect anecdotes also, quotations, sayings, and reports, sometimes poetic verses, and then put them in your journal. And the very important thing, please do not copy from any random source. Please don't do it. There are a lot of fake news and fake websites, conspiracy theories moving around, and because you are on internet open to all this big data, you'll always find stuff that is basically untrue or has no basis at all. So please be very sure about choosing the right kind of content. And then it helps you at conscious and subconscious level, helps you build strong and authentic knowledge, which is essential for a public speaker, helps you improve command over language, and then helps you write superb content. And then the important thing I told you, if you believe everything you read, you better do not read. Well, I'll move on to the writing part. Well, writing is essential. As a speaker, as a public speaker, you need to write your own content. And the content's originality will keep you aloof from the herd. So what you need to do is write important points, listen to whatever you speak and write that down. As I told you before, you need to keep reviewing whatever you're writing, and you must contemplate, sit in a small room and think about stuff and start writing about it and start correcting it. And you can sometimes take help of a teacher if you want, but at the same time, do not copy content without a proper reference. Please don't do it. And at the same time, try new ways of writing. When we look up at the sky, you see stars, you see this vast expanse of universe. It's basically telling us we have no limits. And then how does it help us? It helps us build clarity. It basically helps us write original content, and then it helps us in better sentence formation, and obviously helps us build good vocabulary. And Benjamin Franklin said something really beautiful: either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. Well, we'll move on to the preparing a speech part. One has to be very honest to one's own self. I talked about it in the previous lesson also. And bait fish with what it loves the most. You must know your audience. And the first move being the key, research the right content, important, and then adding stuff properly, the facts, stories, etc. And then the last, how to leave the audience. The structuring of talk is important. Remember this very diagram forever. You have to begin. The first 10 seconds are important. You have to begin to gain interest in the first 10 seconds. So you have to structure your speech like that, and then give a brief outline shortly after that, and then incorporate stories. Novelty is always good. Restrict to 2 to 3 points or 3 to 4 points, and then add some facts, statistics, and revolve around one major area, one major idea. And at the same time, you should try to incorporate humor if you're comfortable with it only, and then review it and see if there are any mistakes, try to correct them. At the same time, after you do that, you should summarize the talk, and after summarizing, leave the audience with an interesting end. And bait the fish with what it loves. Dale Carnegie, in his book How to Influence People and Win Friends, writes this beautiful thing. I often went fishing up in Maine during the summer. Personally, I'm very fond of strawberries and cream, but I found that somehow, for a strange reason, fishes prefer worms. So when I went fishing, I didn't think about what I wanted. I thought about what they wanted. I didn't bait the hook with strawberries and cream. Rather, I dangled a worm or a grasshopper in front of the fish and said, "Wouldn't you like to have that?" This is such a profound statement. It basically talks about human psychology. We often want to talk about ourselves, think about ourselves, but as a public speaker, you need to think about the audience, what the audience basically demands. So if it's an old folk, you cannot talk about Shin Chan and Chota Bean. You need to understand that. And then the first move is the key. You can add up a quote by a famous author, or start with a story, or mention an incident, or say some mind-boggling fact in the beginning, or start with a magic trick. This always works with me. And start with a prop sometimes. The 2016 Toastmasters winner, he basically in the final office competition, he uses a cigarette, tries to light it up in front of thousands of people. That was quite brave, but it kind of worked for him. So we can use a lot of such unconventional crops. You can develop a curiosity by saying stuff or doing stuff and asking certain questions. And poetry also works quite well for me. Then researching the right content, essential, my dear friends. Books have always been our friends, they'll always be. And then, write kind of newspapers, write, unbiased newspapers, go through them. Or internet obviously has turned out to be one of the biggest friends. And then it's always good to go through some original, journals and research papers to find your content. And then the most important thing, it can even go to a professor. Remember this guy? He ultimately turned out to be a good man and helped Harry Potter. So, professors aren't bad after all. And then you need to leave the audience to live in their heart. Summarize, you can summarize the whole talk, request the audience at the end for action, take a pledge, or crack a joke. You can even add a poetic verse if you want, or a quotation from a sacred source, some Bible, etc. The prelude to the next part, it is, you need to memorize the whole talk, but not cram it, make bullets, and at the same time practice. Not till you get the speech right, remember it, but to the point when you cannot get it wrong. And that takes us to the journey to prosperity. You see, kiddos, our Soniji and Sonuji are doing fine. They now understand how to prepare for a speech and how to prepare a speech. You see the amount of confidence on their faces now? They look awesome. Well, they have very little to go to the flight of prosperity. We'll need another lesson for that. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about what present adaptation is all about. Till then, goodbye. I'll leave you with: to exist is to change is to mature is to go on building oneself endlessly.